Welcome to It's a Controls Problem, where we do precision guesswork based upon unreliable data given to us by those of questionable knowledge. I'm your host, Charles Johnson. All right, well, welcome everyone to another episode of It's a Controls Problem. I am your host, Charles Johnson, and I'm here with my best buddy in the whole wide world, Matthew Vanberg. Matthew, say hello.
Hello, my best friend.
And today we have a very special guest here. We have Mr. Jonathan Spooner. He is the co-founder and CTO of Stacks+Joules. And so he is the counterpart to Michael Conway that we had here last season. So Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. So psyched to be on this famous podcast. I'm really excited. My LinkedIn feed just is always the controls problem. So I'm psyched to be on it.
Well, it's always a controls problem, regardless of what it is. We get blamed for everything. So, but first off, I really want to say thank you to what you do as an organization as a whole. Taking the community at large that you have inside New York City and are building talent for an industry that really is starving for the younger generation to come in and take over, because I'm a dinosaur. Matthew is a baby dinosaur. But the dinosaurs. I'm 43. Hush. But I'm a dinosaur in the industry. I've been in the industry since, literally for 33 years. My dad kind of brought me into controls when I was very young. So I've been doing it for a long time. But no, what you do, I think, is absolutely great, and we need more of that in the community to really keep it alive, in my opinion.
Well, and I think the industry itself is finding themselves bereft of talent to address these new smart buildings. One interesting kind of point that I brought up that honestly AI has helped me answer is, a couple of years ago, I was like, I wonder about LEED certified buildings and local law 97 scores, and if the two kind of match muster. And it was really difficult. It was like comparing apples and peas. There was no data that really aligned. But then Claude Code came on the scene, and I was like, here, Claude, here's it was like a 4 gig file for the local law 97, coordinates to building score to kind of obfuscate and so forth. But Claude cranked through it and was like, ding, here are 6 platinum LEED score, buildings with the logo in the lobby. Who got a D? And you're like, oh, darn. And then you see buildings where they didn't just get a 0, which means they didn't file. So that's like a paperwork thing. So you can kind of look at that and be like, oh, okay. Maybe, something went wrong. But then you see them with a 3 or a 7. And you're like, oh, damn, you actually tried.
Yes.
And got mashed in the face. So yeah, it really is something that I look at as the fingerprints on the wall of the lack of workforce in New York City that is creating this exact problem, where buildings are paying millions of dollars for the Ferrari of building automation systems. And then they've got the 2-stroke motor mechanic who's like, hey, what do I do in here? And it's just so mismatched in terms of talent that buildings are coming out LEED and very, very good intentions at the beginning, but then there's no workforce to actually maintain those systems.
I have not heard about a LEED certification in, I'm going to tell you, probably 17 years. I was actually a part of the first LEED Platinum building in DC. It was called Lafayette Towers. And, as you are aware, with with lead building, sometimes it depends on what boxes you check, right? Like sometimes it's not about just the HVAC. Hey, do you have a garden on top of your roof?
Yep.
Or, how many bike racks, do you have? So like there are a lot of things that people do check in certain aspects. But yeah, I think from the building automation side, there should be more done on that. And you're right about
Yeah.
those scores too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, some of the leads are certified to renovation, so it's just a floor and, so on and so forth. So, but filtering for like full building and what did they get? And, you see the big gold or platinum plaque in the lobby and you're like, where's the piece of paper with the D on it? I don't see
Yup.
that around here.
Where's the beef, right?
Yeah, totally.
Got the octogenarians just kind of looking for it.
Exactly.
I can't find where you put the D there. Yeah.
And if they lose that certification, I guarantee you they don't take the plaque down.
I doubt it.
Yeah. They had it at some point,
Yeah.
So, what a question I have for you. You definitely talked about like I was going to ask about your your digital acumen, but you kind of led that what you have that led you into the smart buildings. But as like at our core, like we believe that like learning's never done, right? Like I learn, I educate myself every day that I'm in this industry. So with your extensive background in tech, like what was the most humbling thing that you had to learn from scratch when you stepped into the BAS world?
God. Old communication protocols and like stuff that I was lucky enough to skip over. Like I just was like copper, whatever, and just kind of jumped into fiber and jumped into Ethernet and so forth. And then I forget, is it RS-232 or whatever that pulse thing? Like I worked for a summer for this Bill Mardorf. He's a wire and controls guy in New York, and we worked in a bunch of NYCHA buildings, and I climbed inside boilers and I pulled, thick, solid core wire. And, that was DDC, but that was like hardcore, like compared to the Lily, like, oh, oops, you bumped my Ethernet cord, I might have to reset and so forth. This was like through conduit heavy duty stuff. So I think, what is the most humbling is that real infrastructure that you have to deal with. I mean, my career came up through New York through urban digital input, like doing bike share, doing these Link NYC things. And toughest thing is not the technology. Toughest thing is hardening it for New York City and hardening your building automation system to a building with people and so forth. That's the tough thing. And so that's really where it goes from like, oh, what a cute little Raspberry Pi, whatever thing that's really delicate and you can only build one versus like reproducible and somebody who's not trained can put it in and have it not destroy the whole system and all those types of things. So yeah, hardening of hardware was really, really the most humbling, just seeing that in person.
I think you bring up a really good point there about stuff that's really old too, because that stuff still exists. And so like, even when newer technicians come in and I'll say even newer technicians, like let's say even, 5 to 10 years they've been in the industry. There are a lot of old stuff that that they don't know. Like I see things in like HVAC talk or Reddit where someone that takes me like, hey, what is this thing? I'm like, oh, let me go ahead and knock the dust off it. Here, allow me to explain, what this is here. Someone asked, they're like, when did you ever have to use a floppy disk? I'm like, when we had to back up everything, duh. like
like
only
5
one
years
disc?
ago.
Yeah, like only one disc? No, we had multiple.
No,
Like even try to tell people from like the old train tracer system to do a backup was on a tape recorder. A tape recorder.
dude,
Like
that's
like
awesome.
when someone brought out the tape recorder for me, and I'm like, what is this? And they're like, oh, you do a backup on it.
Oh man.
Okay. And like I was something I had to learn, like, I don't know, like 2010, I think I had to learn how to do that. But I was like, man, that's a lot of that
Dude.
stuff is, it should be documented better too for the younger generation, because it's still going to exist. I mean, at some point it may not, but
But it's such an interesting balance because so in New York, we started talking to some of the community colleges about their building automation educational approaches. And one of them that we spoke to was like, oh yeah, we really focus on pneumatics. And we were like, what? And they're like, oh yeah, for building automation, we barely touch computers. We just focus on pneumatics because New York has tons of steam and tons of pneumatic pressure that's really running a lot of the automation. And we were like, dude, but you're missing out on like the whole industry pivot by just, learning COBOL and just like trying to keep the dinosaur alive versus, oh, actually, this is what the new systems are. This is the stuff that they're ripping out of buildings and replacing it with is this new stuff. So it's really push and pull because you don't want to totally get rid of, the old systems at least the old workforce to cater to those old systems, but you also want to motivate people towards the future.
yeah, that's a really good point. I was going to bring it up. Like a lot of times where you see things that are primarily pneumatic and very little DDC. Yeah, they've got people there that they don't want to let go, and they, that's all they know. National Naval Medical Center. I remember when I designed my first pneumatic job, and a salesman was like, "Yeah, we got a pneumatic job to design." I was like, "Why isn't DDC permitted in the building?" And literally, I opened up I asked the question before I even looked at the spec. He's like, read the spec, it'll come to you. And then literally page 1 says DDC not permitted in building. Oh, well, the spec says it's not there. But yeah, they had a bunch of union guys that they didn't want to let go at the time. And eventually eventually that's going to change. But when people ask me to explain pneumatics now, I tell them oil clogs it, water corrodes it, 15 years later, replace with DDC. But actually seeing some of those people and how they troubleshoot is actually kind of really interesting. Like we put a DDC system with pneumatics, and then I saw like the old timer literally go and like bypass the DDC, put everything back in pneumatic until the DDC was fixed. Like, he had like they had like a whole system. I was like, okay, all right, I see you.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that that your company has spoken about, and you're not shy about it, which I think is great, is leveraging the genius that exists in urban schools. So, how much of your personal mission, and I'm pretty sure it's a lot of it, but how much is your personal mission about energy efficiency, and how much is about like that social like return on investment and empowering like the overlooked talent?
Yeah, I mean, the energy efficiency is a nice like artifact that comes out of what we're doing, but truly, I was a philosophy major who didn't know anything, and the internet was happening in front of me, and I got a job in 93 doing like French in action at a distance. And it was like, got in, really didn't matter because I just like the whole industry just kind of grew around me. And it feels very much like that's the moment we're at with a lot of these kids where, they're 18 to 24. And for them to get into building automation now, I mean, I know building automation has been around forever and so forth, but to get in now when we're really at that transition moment where the facilities management and the technology and so forth are all starting to kind of converge, Like, this talent is necessary. And so giving an on-ramp to this economic mobility to an audience that has the talent. And we, building automation as an industry has just been fishing in colleges and other vendors, and they haven't expanded their, fishing parameters. And by going into urban areas, which are where all the buildings are, you're finding a local audience filled with talent and genius who are very interested in a tech forward career once you introduce the idea to them. And, a lot of my friends are in the tech industry, but are currently unemployed and looking for a long time as full stack developers, as, application developers, as big data analysts. Like, a lot of tech positions are looking 8, 9, 10, 12 months. And I've had a lot of my old colleagues from Google reach out about building automation because it is one of the few tech sectors where it's still steadily going. And AI and crypto and everything else is like up and down and up and down. And it's like great if you're in an upswing. But right now it's so it goes every which way every week. Whereas building automation is just kind of around, and it's like, oh, Niagara just launched a new one. And it's like, dude, okay, that's been coming for years. Like, this is not like, oh my God, there's a new ChatGPT and it totally took out DeepSeek or whatever. Like, every week there seems to be some kind of upheaval in that world. Whereas, in BAS, it's just constant, steady growth.
Yeah. It's a very good point. Like, the last year that for my LinkedIn, I did a whole deep dive on development and kind of opening that platform for people who are trying to get in. So, like, we have a learning hub for LinkSpring. And so I actually posted a free developer series on there for people to kind of get that confidence to come in, because you're right. AI, it's all the rage and all this, and BAS, BAS just kind of keeps humming along. But I think that there's an untapped market where now you've got, where now, like, the focus could be more on the BAS industry. And, it really is going to even depend upon vendor to vendor. Like, I think that a lot more vendors are probably going to have to think about potentially opening up their framework to allow better innovation. Um,
Yeah.
there are a lot of detractors for Niagara. I mean, I'm a certified Niagara instructor and a certified Niagara developer. So I know a thing or two about Niagara, but one of its big things is that it allows a more open framework for people to extend that technology, and the other vendors don't necessarily have that yet. And I think that
Yeah.
if they start to do that, then it would. Um, I think that it would actually be crucial for them. So I think that that's right. Like, I think that you're going to see, I think, a surge in developers, especially because you have people that are a lot of using AI. However, we're going to have people that are going to need to be able to maintain that as well.
But
AI
I think
AI may not necessarily do that, but
there is, like, because right now I feel like most BAS, their AI strategy is very Copilot-esque, where it's just like, do you have a question? Like, it's just a chat interface slapped on the side of a dashboard. Whereas, when, and eventually it will, the open claw moment of BAS happens, when there's like a platform that someone creates that's fully open, that can run Niagara next to EasyIO, next to everything else, and really can, like, work across things in a really open fashion. That's where the openness is going to cause everybody's standard to be like, whoops, okay, yeah, we got to open this in order for, Clawbot BMS to go through this thing and actually have all the data and have access to the right, and, all that stuff. Though, man, OpenClaw is awesome yet scary.
Claude, I think, is the strongest option, especially for coding,
Yeah.
specifically. I started testing some limits of it. Now, normally I don't mention link spring. This is actually the most I've mentioned it here on the podcast. Um, but link spring doesn't actually allow you to use AI for coding. And obviously, the
Yeah.
premise is, hey, we don't know how much gets
Yeah.
put out there in the world and whatnot. Now I know. Now one thing I like about Claude is that if you want to keep it private, it's kept private. Like it's
Yeah.
not a thing where it's like it's just out there. Um,
Yeah.
but even then, like I've had things that I've used Claude for, like and actually these would be things I'd love to even like teach your students about. So like if they have a graphic that they learn to do in Niagara,
Mhm.
um, one thing that I've used Claude for is I took the XML code of PX and said, hey, here is a PX file. I have this example right here. I need you to duplicate this in every section across these few files, and then it generated all the code for me, and I literally just copied it, pasted it back in, and something that would have taken me like 8 hours to do, I
Yeah.
got done in like 10 minutes,
Yep.
um, which I thought was really good. Um, Michael Conway, I remember having a good conversation with him, but you guys represent together the technologist and the educator coming together. So,
Yeah.
in the early days, what was the biggest silo between your two worlds that you had to break down to make Stacks and Jules work?
um, well, I don't know if Mike filled you in, but we were actually best friends since second grade. So
Yes.
we had a very like symbiotic relationship. I would say the biggest challenge was I was not a teacher, yet I was teaching a class. And Mike was a great teacher, but he was teaching another class. So I would have to teach one class and so forth. But also, I knew all the technology of how the light bulb setups and how the HVAC sensors all worked and how to get that online. He didn't know that as much. So we would kind of go back and forth and help each other in that, like, oh, pedagogically, what we need to do here versus technologically, what we need to do in the class. So that was really the biggest, dividing line. And, you know, I think the technology piece is pretty, it's definitely innovative in like our our needs versus what's available in the marketplace. Like we have a lighting control system that's now using 3 Tasmota bulbs and an MQTT server to actually broadcast the lighting control to those bulbs. And so we've elevated it with learning about MQTT and its usage throughout the industry and such. So we're really like taking those technological concepts and running as far as we can with that, but we can't go too deep into like like we don't want to teach you how to program Python. We want to teach you how to script Python so that you can go into a big Python document, read what it's doing, see where the possible error is, make the edit, and then save it and be out of there. And that's like a big difference that a lot of schools have a hard time with, is they want to teach like how to set up a base Python library and what's your naming convention and how to and it's like, dude, that is not how it works in the field. You are just like, here's a console. Yep, you got to edit this thing. It's got the wrong IP address in there. I don't know how you do it, but somebody said you knew how to use computers, and like that's your job. And yeah, and basically you just go in, you retype in the IP address, you save it, and hey, you're a genius. So that's really, I think, where the that's where the magic is that pedagogy that can bring those types of learning events, like that kind of difficult connectivity of technology and being able to error correct and so forth in real time, to those, pretty forward-facing technological skills.
Yeah. I mean, I like that way. I like that approach of how you're approaching Python. I wrote a Java class that teaches the basics of Java through Niagara program objects. So
There you
like
go.
I slowly start to build, some things in Java, common things that you'll be doing in Niagara. So they actually each lab they go builds on what they have. And like the second lab they do is actually troubleshoot bad programs. And so like they're going to get errors. I'm like, these are the common errors you're going to see. Here's how you fix them. Like,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff I think is super important to get. And I think like having them going, don't care about naming conventions right away, like whatever, like develop your own standards later on, but just have the good fundamental ideas of being able to not only troubleshoot and then even start to write your own code is fine. Because who cares what it's named? If you can, if you got it working, guess what? Good for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that whole software stack is going to change in 3 months anyway. So don't be too precious about your oh, well, we named them after different star systems in Star Wars. And you're like, oh my God, dude, this is all going to be ripped out in 3 weeks. So I don't think you need to go too deep. But I definitely understand the precious sysadmin men.
Yeah, I just want people to just be able to do something. One of my weak points in controls was always building panels. I don't know why. I always struggled with them. I just even trying to turn screws and fitting in the terminal where I can see a tech just go ding ding, and I'm like, how did you do that? What kind of science did you use to turn the screw to get it there? So when someone asks me to fix wiring in a panel, I'm like, do you want it done right or do you want it done neat? And they're like, well, both. I'm like, no. I'm asking you which one you want, because while it might be neat, it may not be right. But let me tell you, when I rip it all out and it works, it may not be the prettiest thing, but I can assure you that you'll never have to troubleshoot it ever again.
And that's one thing is that has become kind of the on-ramp for our students. Most hiring places are like, oh yeah, we'll hire them in for 3 months. They work in the panel shop. They learn how to wire all the stuff. Then when they go in the field, they already know all the components. They know the guts of these things. So for them, now they can shadow a senior and learn how to install and troubleshoot on site, having that panel knowledge. And so what we did was we actually added 2 weeks of wiring and low voltage wiring instruction. So exactly what you're talking about, because I too am a very blunt force object when it comes to wiring, because I have big hands that really do not do well with little teeny things.
Yes.
And oh my God, it is just a soup of copper whenever I try to strip the damn screw head as I'm trying to screw the thing in. And so, but then, these kids who are in class, they're just sitting there stripping and stripping and stripping and getting really good at you see those electricians who can just pop and the perfect strip of the wire. So they, sitting in class, just kind of heading out on that. So yeah, I mean, and that's a dexterous skill, is that kind of, low power wiring. And it's not electrician level 120 or anything, but it's still stepping down, and it's still, it's still real wiring, and it's still high quality stuff. So yeah.
So when we last spoke with Michael, we touched on the keys to keyboard transition. Yeah. And so since then, and Matthew, I don't remember when he was one of our earlier guests, right? Like February or March of 2025, something.
Yeah, he was maybe the third guest of our first season.
Yeah, so it's been as I like to call it, the long ago, like the land of the dinosaurs, like that. Yeah. It's there. So with that keys to keyboard transition, since that, what is the biggest technological or operational evolution happening at Stacks+Joules?
I would say what it is we are extending our training scope so that Our core program is still focused on the BAS technician integrator, that role. But now we've extended the opportunity for a select, 5 to 10 students to do a digital facilities internship that we run out of our DAB lab. The DAB lab is a building down on the Lower East Side that we basically adopted. It's owned and run by a nonprofit community organization called Henry Street Settlement. And it was basically a 4-story building that housed a kitchen, a gym, a daycare, a school, and some offices. And they had a single loop boiler and a ton of air conditioning window units, and they would just run them all the time. And, they were a nonprofit, so that's how it works. And that's all they could do. So we came and put some building automation controls in. And
Delta,
we actually
right?
started excuse me?
Was it Delta?
Delta, yes. Yeah, we used Delta controls and put in monitoring devices for the boilers and for the air conditioner units and so forth. And really, that is, that's where I think, a lot of the interest is starting to go is towards having these real devices in a real building and using experiences that the students have with those real hands-on devices as kind of a checklist to validate the skills that they've learned to an employer to lower the risk of hiring them. To make it easier, we had students who saw the sensor on the ACCUs, went out for a couple days and went up, hunted the wire, went back, realized the transformer was blown, came downstairs, got a new transformer, went upstairs, unscrewed it, screwed in the new transformer, brought it back online, went downstairs, checked the amperage upstairs, made sure it was meeting with the right value on the BMS, and pulled it back online. That task, just that task, telling that to a BMS contractor and being like, yeah, this kid can do that, or can hunt down comms issues, or can update, set a static IP on a striker, can do like all these different tasks. That's when you de-risk the hiring equation. And that's when, this unexpected population that nobody's really fishing from comes in with these amazing abilities and amazing skills that really put them above just an entry level because they've proved they can do these basic tasks that a technician needs to do.
Yeah, so that's your way of kind of like hacking the recruitment process to making the digital trades, appear cooler to the younger generation too, right?
Precisely. Yeah. And I mean, the other component that we've done is, we added this hands-on element of like repairing the sensors through the building and being really hands-on with that. But then we've also started to partner with Autodesk, and we have a training in Revit where the students make a digital twin of the boiler and the ACCUs and the rest of the building so that they can start to do a 3D walkthrough and start to put in devices and start to learn about the devices and like what the pumps really do when it comes to the hot water versus the potable water, and like, learning a digital dollhouse of what a building is like one of the most amazing lessons for learning what the systems of a building really do and where they go and what risers do and so forth. So we found that learning these digital twin skills, yes, some students go on to jobs in architecture firms doing digital twin building, but we see it as a learning tool for BAS technicians because then they can visualize the 3D schema of a building and where the systems would be. And I think it gives them a real advantage.
Yeah, I think, I think the approach of, you know, especially when you're dealing with, a demographic that is not as privileged as others, and the same opportunities are not given to them. You allow that opportunity, and I'm a full believer that, anyone has the capability of unlocking their potential. It's a matter of the opportunity to do so. Um, you know, you don't know what you truly can do until you're actually pushed to those limits, and then you're like, I can actually do this. Like this is something for me.
And it's interesting because I was just talking with some friends yesterday about this, about how it even stems before the opportunity being offered. When I was saying before how like, oh, I found the web in 93 and got in early and so forth. But the truth is, you keep rewinding and you're like, well, my parents did get me an Osborne computer when I was a little nerd and like, kept getting me a different computer and kind of engaged that interest. Back then I was thinking, oh, I just played Space Invaders and an ASCII. Oh, that's all that was to me. But it like gave me a propensity. And so a lot of the things that you just don't realize is, if you're given computer class only in middle school and then it's just not given, there's like a lack of propensity that exists. And, a lot of the students that we work with, their first instinct around AI is like, I don't know. Like, I just hear my parents getting upset about AI, so I'm not so sure. And it's really interesting to be like, well, actually, there are some really empowering aspects to it that can really help improve some pieces that you're working on. So it's just an interesting push-pull of like, you want to build technology, you want to have technology be an augmenter and an empowerer, but you also have to be aware of what the perception is of technology. Because for some people who've had technology kind of move forward in their life, they're like, oh yeah, of course I'm going to get, meta glasses or whatever, because I always, get technology. Whereas some people are a bit more like, well, I'm not so sure about that. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting duality.
I think there's a fine line with technology. On the one hand, I feel technology has given us significant improvements that we never would have been able to do manually. On the other hand, I think in some cases it's made us less smart in the sense of like I don't need to think about a lot of stuff. I have something here to help me gather it when I need to. For example, I'm going to be walking a project, and so I'm checking for clearance, and so the guy is like, "Hey, what's oh, I'm going to need your driver's license number," and I'm like, "Oh, XYZ." He's like, "Where's your wallet?" I was like, "Do you have to go to your wallet?" I'm like, "No, no, no. I know it offhand." He's like, "How do you?" I'm like, "Look, the things that I know are just kind of ridiculous. Like I have bank account numbers memorized, even the VIN number on my vehicle. So like a lot of that stuff for me
Wow.
is like I've just trained I played chess for a long time competitively, and so like memorization is one of those things that I've always done. But for me, I need to stay relevant. So I do approach technology some very willingly, some with a little caution. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that when you find that balance of, oh, that's not so scary after all.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like when you hear parents, as a child, you're hearing parents saying XYZ. So like obviously they've been around the world longer, so they know more than I am. People are going to take whatever kind of suits them and run with it. Or have someone like, oh, you thought that was bad? No, here, let me show you this. They're like, oh, that's really cool stuff. And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah. And then you could start doing this, and
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
When you mentioned Space Invaders, I actually built Space Invaders for Niagara. I actually
Oh,
have,
really?
yeah. I
Oh,
actually have
nice.
a whole, module of retro games: Pac-Man, Tetris, even Solitaire, Minesweeper. So like even
Have
like
they
the days
ported
of,
Doom to it yet? Like that always
I'm
seems like
That's
a
I'm actually
exactly
working
what
on
I
priority.
it.
asked. That's what I
Yeah.
asked.
Well, I'm working on that. So
Oh,
I've
nice.
got
All right.
it's not very good right now, but I am working I am working on it. There are some things I need to figure out. That's probably going to take a year for me to do. So I was trying to
Ooh.
take that and figure it out. But Matthew saw that I actually have a 3D engine that I use.
Oh,
That like
really?
yeah. So I actually, it kind of looks Minecrafty, but like you walk into a building, you get to see a panel, you can interact with the panel. You go
Oh,
back out to
nice.
the parking lot, like you get like a service ticket, and then you have to go and figure that stuff out too. So yeah,
But
like
is it like scan data, or is it something that you can Minecraft build and
it's
just be
something
like,
that you can
oh,
build. Yeah.
oh,
So
sweet. Oh, that's excellent. Because honestly, man, the generation Minecraft crew that we have, if we threw down those kinds of tools in front of them, because we have some anime
yeah,
nerds. Like this dude did a full anime like intro video of how to launch the daemon and how to get the workbench going and
really, I got to
how
see
to,
that.
oh
Okay.
dude,
That's
it's
awesome.
But speaking of the younger generation, so like we see a lot of like Gen Z searching for like meaningful green jobs. So how are you framing building automation as a climate control role to a generation that is trying to figure out, or maybe not even know what a VAV box is at the point in time? Like how do you frame that to them?
well, I mean, that really is what in New York, it's just a different perspective because if you're living in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, there is a giant generator station at the end of 14th Street, all the way on the east side, that runs. And the downwind smoke path is the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And so, we've had classes that the kids are like, oh yeah, whatever. This is like a VAV box, or this is, lighting control, and it's going to save X, Y, and Z energy. And, there's the interest in the energy efficiency and so forth. But then a kid in the back will be like, yeah, but maybe then that power station wouldn't run as much and my cousin wouldn't have asthma. And you're like, ooh, oh, wow. Oh, okay. Yeah, that brings it all home.
Whew.
And so having that kind of connection to climate and to green aspects is amazing, and is like a really, it's a tough spot to be in, but it is something that really focuses and says like, yeah, if I can do this as my job, because a lot of the kids that we train are on the periphery of the island, and the middle of the island is where all the super tall buildings are. And so they look at these mega buildings. And so for them, that's, that's a great opportunity. And that really, I think, is defining in the city of like, yeah, the big buildings in New York. Having a role where you can have a laptop, be with a backpack, take the subway to whatever stop, get off, go into the building, go up into the mechanical room, be the smartest guy in the building who knows exactly where the error points are, go hunt those down, error connect, get all the communications up and running. Like that is our students' fantasy job, because they get authority, they get intelligence, they get, flexibility and the ability to move through the city that they already know how to move through. So it is just this image that a lot of them really, really align to, is this technician role. And I've been trying to get them to watch Brazil and to see the Robert Tuttle character that De Niro has, but
Oh yeah.
no takers. Nobody's interested in that story, old man. I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, oh, but it's so dead on with what you're talking about. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, old man.
That really, wow, like that kind of blows my mind, for even a young person just to like think at that level already. And I think,
Yeah.
when you see that, I think like at that point in time, something like clicks and you're like, yeah, you're made for this. Like, you know
Yeah.
what? You're like, you're gonna take this and you're gonna run with it. And then you're now gonna think of ways to prevent the other cousins, not even their cousins, but someone else's cousin from from getting that, getting asthma that way. So that's a really, um,
But
that's a
it's
really
like
good thing.
such a heroic mantle that they can take on in this taking on a really high paying, really educated, constantly making them study, constantly being ready to hustle and so forth. Like getting that role instead of, gigging at CVS or Uber Eats or whatever, which you never get a running start. You never get to like work hard. You just are like, oh, I almost got a gig and up, I got another gig and up another. And it's just drip, drip, drip. And you never are like, whoa, I worked, on a whole project for 3 months. Like that just doesn't happen. But there's so much satisfaction in those types of engagements that I think, I think these projects really give that ability to have that long-term savored work experience that isn't just retail. And it
Yep.
does instill pride, and it does instill like, a really like good feeling and an empowered feeling in your community.
Yeah, learning an industry that is always going to be there. There's always going to be heating and cooling that needs to be done, and there always are going to be different ways to make it as efficient as possible. So that's not going anywhere anytime soon. So they're setting themselves up for a really good career. If any of the students that are if any of the students that are listening to the podcast, one thing that I will tell you right now is, in some of these companies that you go work for, there are going to be people that are going to want to knock you down. In some cases, there are people that are going to be gatekeeping. Some people are going to feel like you need to pay your dues to kind of get in, and you have to push on that, and show that, hey, I understand that that way, but this is the real, this is the way that's going to happen, and you're going to have to get with that program at some point in time.
And one thing that I'd actually ask your audience to consider is we have launched a mentorship program where for 8 weeks, we have a mentor partner with a student, and it really is helping them at the end of their studying, basically the tail end of their Niagara studies, through the graduation event and through the first few weeks of that job search. And it's really just having an industry person that you can talk to and be like, hey, I'm applying to XYZ at Bosch, I'm applying to XYZ at Johnson. What should I be thinking? What should I be expecting? Is this role really what, it says level 3 engineer? Am I that? Well, not really. You just have to give a little bit of intel, because this is the first any of these kids, any of these family members have ever heard of this industry. Generally that's a pretty normal case. And that is something we've launched and we've really been having a great experience with. And I would love to open it up because we are recruiting now for an upcoming cohort. So if anybody is interested, please give them my email and I will put them in touch with our mentor lead.
Yeah, I do think. I mean, like I definitely want to take some time to talk to people. Being in the industry, I've worked in a lot of places. I was an independent contractor for a long time too, so I've been around. I've seen a lot. I would absolutely love to just impart some knowledge to them too. So yeah, I will absolutely let you know, and we will reach out to our community to help out too, because it's the only way that we're going to improve this as a whole. Um, Speaking of your cohort, I know that we talked about a little this just before we started recording, but with the recent growth of grants procured, how is Stacks and Joules model? How's that shifted from a localized NYC program? And this is kind of a little segue to a blueprint that can be replicated in other markets like Charlotte or Chicago or Boston.
Well, so that is actually what we are doing exactly this month. Is March 30th. We're kicking off our first program in the Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina, and we're collaborating with Goodwell of Southern Piedmont. And what our real game plan is to use that as the template for rolling out further to as many cities as we can. We've seen so much interest across the country from various contractors in just cities that we haven't been able to motivate, our students in New York because they're part of families and so forth. So relocating really isn't in the cards, but moving that training to a localized place in Florida, Texas, Denver, Chicago, Detroit, like all of these areas have had huge companies coming to us and being very, very interested in having us come and train. So yeah, that's the exciting thing is really this expansion in March. We're going to have another cohort in Charlotte in September. And so we should have 50 new employees in the building automation industry by the end of 26 in
Awesome.
the Charlotte market. And we're collaborating with some really incredible companies in the Charlotte market. But if there are any Charlotte contractors who are looking for some entry-level talent that will really just blow their minds, please get in touch, because we will have a graduation event come July. And we would love to have you come through. It'll be at the Goodwill Southern Piedmont. And we welcome visitors.
When we talk about buildings that are unconnected or like have just like a thermostat. So with your vision that you have, for,
Pardon me, Charles.
Yep, no worries. Yeah, no.
He heard you laughing hysterically, and he's like, no, I can't have any of that.
Yeah, I need that. Yeah, I need to have fun too. Like,
Yep.
What do you mean?
Those are my laughs.
Yeah, did I catch you having fun?
Now we've got the 2-hour Hot Wheel video running.
There we go. Well,
yes.
I only have a few more questions here, so it should.
No.
Anyway, so I'll go back to the question.
Yeah.
So when we talk about buildings that are unconnected, with your vision that you have of staffing them with the talent that you're training, what do you think a smart building looks like? Let's say in 5 years, if we succeed into getting everyone staffed and working in these buildings to make them smarter, what do you think that looks like?
It's interesting because I think my perspective of what that would be has changed dramatically now that I've actually had to start working with data. Where before I was like, oh, I wanted to basically read my mind and do all this and do all that. And it's like, nope, I don't want to maintain all the sensors that do that. I want to figure out what's the MVP, like what's the minimal apparatus that I need to put in a building that gives me knowledge of situation enough that I can make a, intelligent call. I can control things, however I need to, but I don't need to know like, oh, is the closet like at the right temperature and like all this kind of oversensification that I feel like we kind of got sold into as an industry of like, look at all these amazing, and, it was something that I myself I was working in urban and retail technology, and that was a real impetus, was like roll out lots of Bluetooth, roll out lots of technology like this that, is cool, but nobody was looking at their phone for directions that way. So it just never turned into something. And I think building automation is going to do this contraction to minimal amount of sensors and controllers in an environment that really, really have to be there, because I know that the intelligence of the cloud can read and infer things that mean we don't need quite as much data as we as humans think that we absolutely must capture for each room and each mechanical environment. So I really hope and think that we're going to see kind of a lean use of technology that will kind of go against the commercial pressures that are going on, because, you're seeing the open source movement really push through. You're seeing a lot of these things go, but the maintenance of tons of endpoints, I think that is kind of coming to an end. And I really hope and see the future as maintaining as few endpoints as possible, just maintaining that data is constant and flowing with those few endpoints is something that we can achieve and gives good insights.
Yeah, it's a really good a good outlook. I want to kind of circle back a little bit, because you talked about your students being really excited about the digital twin, and so that's the diversity and automated buildings laboratory. So,
Yeah.
how does having that live digital twin change the way a student learns compared to, let's say, traditional bench testing?
What that really does is, so working with Generation Minecraft, which is this 18 to 24-year-old segment, by giving them 3D tools, we are scratching an itch for them that they like adore and really, really steer into. And to then have it attached not just to gaming, but to professional and vocation and so forth is like amazing, because a lot of these kids, if they have had any computer experience, they've all, I want to program games. And it's like, okay, but there are 15 game programmers in the world who make any money, so that's not a good option. And so they had that door closed and gave up on it entirely. And then to have it reopened with Revit and with the idea of digital twinning and kind of working in that segment, it's like lighting up that interest, but it's also helping learn the MEP systems of a building, because they're having to, just like a dollhouse, build the boiler, put in the risers, put in the pump systems, get the radiators, get the ACCUs, like put all the pieces in the building. And that as a whole is something that really teaches, a novice who's taken 14 weeks of Stacks+Joules. It gets them to understand and be able to visualize what the systems in the building really mean. Like, oh, the boiler attaches to these pumps, which pushes the water up this way, and then there's water coming down that way. And like being able to 3D visualize it is exactly what this generation needs to get it. Whereas, a lot of people my generation and older are kind of freaked out by seeing things in 3D and seeing that kind of rotational ability. So yeah, I think it's really something that is just so natural and apropos for this generation that 3D interfacing is just like the way they would prefer to interact. It isn't quite the argument of like, oh, is it a digital twin valuable? Is it delivering? It's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I like to work with 3D, interactions. Like that's it.
I have two more questions here. So, if you were to look back, let's say, 10 years from now. So 10 years in the future, you look back, what is one metric that will tell you Stacks+Joules truly solved a controls problem?
It is something where they need to standardize the job listings for the friggin' position. But then if you could change the labor department's number, where the labor department's talking in technical HVACR as being like 450,000 are pretty much end on year available and unfilled. If that number could be impacted downward, I think that is the only way that I would see this as like really having an effect, because, we are supplying 100 workers a year to the New York City BAS industry.
Wow.
And that's cool. That's impactful, and that's having a lot of impact on lives and so forth. But that's just scratching the surface. And that's fighting upstream against people not wanting to hire entry level and them wanting to hire seniors and all these things. So it's like, it's a tough project, but eventually for the industry to realize, dude, we just gotta hire young people, get them trained and get them on the field, because there is so much work to do and so many clients that have the money to pay for this and that just want to spend the money so they can get their local law stuff under control or whatever it is. I just think that there's so much opportunity that we owe it to ourselves to get this overlooked population in, to change that number, to change 450,000 a year to like 400,000 a year. I mean, I don't even know what it is, but there is an impact that I want to see on the industry, and that I think the industry themselves will feel once we prove this model to the degree that it's just ubiquitous. Like, you can't be a controls company in a major metro in the United States without having Stacks and Joules students be part of your technician corps. Like, you just can't do it. And that's basically where I think we're headed is, you know, that kind of young gathering point of talent that's going to go in. I mean, I would say previous to this, the maritime academies have been the gathering place and the explosion zone for BAS people. And that's fantastic. But I think we found a different pool here, and we found a way to do it a little quicker than the maritime academy, and get them, you know, in the field and working.
I just will say that's a damn good answer. Matthew, don't cut that. Yes.
The FCC doesn't care about damn. It's okay.
Yeah. We don't care about that one. No, that's such a great answer. I really love that. Like, I think that vision is so good for the community at large. You know, to getting people in, because they're going to have to carry us. They just are. Like, there's no way around it. They're going to have to carry us at some point. One last question here for you. You know, we kind of talked about, getting the controls companies in here. July, guys, remember, July's graduation. Come in and get them while they're hot. How about so we do have a fair amount of facility managers and building owners that listen to us. So what's one thing that they can do today to help build this bridge for the talent that you are producing?
Building that bridge, it really is, it's figuring out where that technician layer lives relative to you and your role. Because if you're an FM, you may be tasked with digital upkeep. Like, you may be that technician role. And, but then again, you may not. You may be told, nope, don't touch that. Call this number whenever it flashes. And, it's just like a different thing. But I think, the FM space is going to change into needing to have digital skills. It's just like, my grandfather was an AMC mechanic, and he, had a box of tools and greasy fingers. And now you pull a car in and they plug it in. And that transition is exactly what we're going through with that keychains to keyboards transition that we're talking about, where, the image of the FM is changing to a more like an IT role. It's a more technical professional role now. And you're having to manage systems on a colossal holistic manner for a built environment. So it's really changing dramatically. And I think FMs are seeing that. I know a lot of building owners are sick to death of having to pay for outsourced BAS talent to come in from Europe to reboot some endpoints and then drop an invoice and fly back. And they're just like, what? Are you kidding me? We just spent $8,000 for this guy to come over here, unplug and replug in a bunch of Wi-Fi endpoints? Yup, that's what we had to do. And, that's unacceptable. That's just unacceptable. And building owners should just be like, no. We need to train some people up and have people available to do this work. It shouldn't be this just bespoke, only in the worst case scenario do we bring in the BAS guys. So yeah, I think from that perspective, it is really changing their point of view of hiring for those roles. And, I think that to my earlier point about the lead certification versus the final outcome and the energy score, it very much is speaking to that building owner, that boardroom, and being like, look, you guys put a lot of money and a lot of effort and planning into making this an efficient engine. And the thing that's missing is that technically skilled labor. It's just missing. And so you're just not going to be able to run your Ferrari building at full torque with people who just don't know what the heck this thing is. And so it really is like a big change that a lot of people have to get pretty used to, because it's coming very quickly. And I think, building owners should be addressing it and looking at it realistically.
Well, Jonathan, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on this podcast. I really have enjoyed talking with you for as long as we have. And, I really am all of your vision in what you do. And I know that, deep down inside that what you guys are doing is the right thing. And I'll say that to anyone on any given day. So, I
Same.
really do thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. So I really have appreciated it.
And I really appreciate you using your platform to help us spread our mission and spread our message. This industry is it's really become a home for us. And, it is something that we are working really, really hard to support, but we are getting a lot of support back from that industry and from individuals such as yourselves. So I just want to really tip my hat and thank you. And really excited to be part of this podcast.
No, your pleasure is all on this side of the table here.
Yes,
So.
you're very, very welcome.
Excellent. Have a
All
great
right.
night.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks,
Yep.
Take
Jonathan.
care, Matthew.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Well, that's all we have for this episode. Remember to stay curious and be ready to shift your perspective. Until next time, I'm Charles.
And I'm Matthew.
And this has been It's a Controls Problem.
Thank you, Chuck. Just kidding.
I like that. That was good. We're keeping that one. We're not editing that out.